Good morning. I want to welcome, good morning, Doug. Y'all right? Good morning. I want to welcome everybody to the Tuesday, September 13th Audit Committee meeting. Let's please start with a prayer with me if you'll bow your heads. Lord, thank you so much for this beautiful day and for the rights we have, including the rights to gather and assemble and to govern ourselves. Be with us today as we go over these numbers and go over these reports and make decisions that are important to us, our families, our neighbors, our entire community. Help us to make all these decisions in fairness and in truth. In your name we pray, amen. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic, one nation,
indivisible,
justice for all. All right, thank you. Before we get started, I wanted to recognize some visitors we have this morning, our leadership class. Do we have a leader who wants to introduce everybody, or can y'all just start at one end and go down the row? I want to hear your name and where you work. How about that? Ronnie, you want to go first? Got it? Very good. Thank you so much for being with us. You're sitting on the wrong side. Are you?
Introduce yourself.
Are you
Because you want to
identifying as
explain
a?
to us why they won't let you sit with them? Oh, I got you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. All right, very good. Thank you for indulging
I'm
us
still
in that.
suspect, Stephen.
Thanks, y'all, for being with us today. I hope you learned something. And at the end, if you have questions or want to know what something meant or how we got to a certain place, please let one of us know. We'd love to talk to you more about it. But we are starting our audit committee meeting this morning. We have had, I'm calling everybody to order. We have a roll call of 4 commissioners present, and I need, gentlemen, an approval of the minutes of the previous meeting from last quarter.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
So moved. And the agenda, there's no changes to that?
I believe it's ready for your approval, Madam Chair.
Very good. I'm approving the agenda. And let's move right into debate agenda. Let's have the reports. Mr. Schneider, please come up and tell us, who did you visit with this quarter?
All right. Good morning, everybody. We have 2 reports for you today, Information Technology and the Procurement Department. And so we'll just jump right into Information Technology. The IT department handles all of the technology support for the county. I'm sure everyone knows that. And they have a service desk that handles the various calls, complaints from the various departments. Each one of those calls is referred to as an incident, and those incidents are managed in Dude Solutions, which is a management software. So we obtained all the incidents, the incident report from Dude Solutions for a couple of randomly selected months. And we performed some analysis on that to try and understand the process, and also try to determine that these incidents are resolved in a timely fashion. So, we selected 10 closed incidents that have been opened and closed during the period of time we were looking at, and 10 that were still open, so open incidents at that time. And we noticed that the closed incidents were closed within a range of time from 0 days. In other words, probably they told someone to hold down Control and Alt and hit delete, or up to almost 200 days. So we inquired about the reason for the longer periods of time, why things were open longer. And in each case, there was an explanation consistent with documentation to show that the Information Technology Department was working with a third-party vendor, or perhaps working on a project in a department where they had to touch each individual person. So I averaged out the number of days open for each of the open incidents and found it was 14 days. I was still curious. So I looked at the total, it was about 4,000 incidents. I averaged it all out, and it came out to 12 days, but I still actually went back to the data yesterday and looked at it a second time or a third time, because I was still curious. This average doesn't seem to tell the whole story because of those outliers that took longer to resolve. And so I found that the median was closer to 1 day. So overall, most cases appear to be closed in 1 day or less, which I think was good results. And so we say no exceptions noted as far as the incidents that we analyzed. We looked at a couple of months. Like I mentioned, the data we looked at included 4,134 individual incidents. Also, the IT department is in charge of backing up data. There's an IT server team that backs up the county's information on a daily basis, but there's a schedule. It's not the same backups each day. There's a schedule for backing up data. We obtained the backup logs, analyzed them, made further inquiries, and noted that we searched for backup failures. Did not see any backup failures on the dates that we looked at. Once the data is backed up, the IT department periodically tests the data to make sure that it is correct. That was most recently done as of the date that we obtained the documentation on March 15th of 2022. It appears that that data was tested successfully and there were no issues in that data. So we noted no exceptions in the two tests of backing up of data and then the testing of the backed up data. We also looked at purchase requisitions and purchase cards and timesheets, our standard procedures. We did not find any exceptions in the threshold testing of the purchase requisitions. No issues with purchase cards, and timesheets were all processed appropriately. And then we looked at inventory. So as you can imagine, there's a significant amount of electronics in the county, which is all in an inventory, all of this electronic stuff. And Dude Solutions also tracks this information and apparently actually scans the county network and based on the IP address can locate the individual computers. So we performed inventory test at two locations. We went to the finance department and also the GIS department. And we obtained a listing of the inventory and we tested it in two ways. We looked at the inventory listing, selected items, and then found them physically at the department. And then we selected physical items in the department and traced them back to the listing. At the finance department, we didn't see any issues at all. Everything matched. There is a column on that listing with employees. And in two cases, it seemed that the wrong employee was in that column. But I believe that field updates when someone logs into a workstation. I'm not 100% sure that we can accurately test it if we pull the list on one day and look on another day. So I didn't consider that an exception. Over in the GIS department, there were two items on the list that we could not locate in person. One was the Dell Precision Tower. I included the serial number here in case this item shows up, and I wanted to make sure that we were 100% clear on what we could not locate that day. And an HP docking station. Now, the computer and the docking station are not related. It's a desktop computer and a laptop docking station. We were unable to find them. Management has responded to that on page 9 of the report. You can look at that. So everything that was in the department, we did trace back to the listing, and so we just report those two items we could not locate.
Y'all know where they are, Michael?
I want to defer that to Sean. I know he worked with his staff to develop the solution.
That's all right.
Come on up, Sean.
Item that was just docking station.
Thank you, Sean.
So we also reviewed documentation concerning the change management process, and we did note that it appears the IT department is following the change management procedures. And we also learned about the 5-year strategic plan while we were there and reviewed the 5-year strategic plan, which we thought was comprehensive and looked good to us. So that's all we have for information technology. Are there any further questions about IT?
Not a question, but just a comment. For the leadership team here, we have a third-party CPA firm audit each department. It's on a schedule over time. So they audit all the operations and then the flow of money through that to bring any exceptions back to us. So that's what this is, in case you don't know. This is a report on the audit of IT and procurement. But we do this quarterly. They come back and present audits of different county departments. So, FYI.
I have a question. We rotate our inventory on all our computers. So, finally, do we surplus and sell those like on GovDev?
Well, we wipe them clean, and we either, some items we truly surplus, some items we recycle just to get rid of. But, you know, there are, I'm gonna say thousands
Right,
of pieces of equipment in the county.
sure.
And for us to have an audit and find that 2 were probably surplus without us knowing where they are, that's pretty good.
I understand
I remember when I got here 11 years ago, or when I became the county manager 11 years ago, we really didn't even have we had a system, but we weren't really keeping up with things. I know Sean's made great strides in his department to keep up with things better. Michael has done a better job of that, but it was a real willy-nilly back in the day. It's not that way now, for sure. They do have it under control, I believe.
I understand. I do that. I know we rotate every year, so I didn't
Yeah.
know if we.
Well, they life cycle. It's not really every year, so some come up every year. but-
3-year, it's a
Yes, sir.
3-year life cycle.
That's correct.
Is
On some equipment.
that correct? Pretty much a 3-year life cycle?
It depends on the equipment, right?
And the inventory listing itself actually was very detailed. Like I mentioned, there was that column for the actual user, and it's updated live. It was, I think overall appears to be quality inventory tracking system. I don't know, again, it's just 2 items we just couldn't locate. They were on the list.
More than
Very
likely,
good, thank you. If we don't have any other questions in that section, let's move on to procurement, please.
All right, so the procurement department in some ways gets tested constantly because we test the purchase requisitions, purchase cards, a lot of the acquisition of goods and services at each department in some ways flows through the procurement department. So we performed some of the same standard procedures that we do in every department, but we also did some more big picture stuff, which I can tell you about now. So first thing we did was procurement threshold testing. So this is countywide procedures. And as you all know, the thresholds have increased. We continue to, because we cover a period of time, occasionally cross over that threshold still. Soon we will be only testing under the new threshold. So we're testing multiple thresholds, but we test to make sure that all of these procedures are followed above the given thresholds, that proper procedures are followed. We view quotes and bids and things like that. And during the periods that we tested, we did not find any exceptions to those procedures. We also looked at the purchase cards for the procurement staff. Some of the staff have purchase cards themselves. We tested their expenditures without any issues, and a small amount of purchase requisitions. The procurement department sometimes does procure things for itself. We didn't have any issues there. Did a vendor analysis, and this is an area where we have had issues in past years and had no issues this time. We take the expenditures for a period of time, sort them by vendor, and find vendors with average purchases below the smallest threshold, 2,000 or 5,000, depending on the time period. And then we find out if those vendors with average purchases below that amount have total expenditures that would be in excess of a higher level threshold. What we're looking for is whether someone in the county is splitting up the purchases to avoid thresholds. For instance, let's say 5 $1,000 purchases to avoid the $5,000 threshold. And in the past, we have found that very thing, but this time around, we did not identify any procedures like that during the vendor analysis. We also looked at the salvage and surplus assets. We looked at some disposals of various items, I believe vehicles, but I can't say for sure from my notes here today. We looked at the warehouse. There are certain procedures and controls surrounding the warehouse and the storage of certain things in the warehouse, and no exceptions during the warehouse testing. We looked at the timesheets and did not have any concerns with the timesheets for the department. And then we looked at bids, RFPs, and RFQs. At each one of these levels, we selected 25 individual types of transactions, and we just searched to make sure that the correct procedures were followed. In the case of bidding, the correct bidder was selected according to the procedures. And in all of that analysis, we did not find any violation of county procedure, and everything looked good to us. So that is our procedures in the procurement department, and we did not have any findings.
On page 6, it talks about water utility overpayments.
Yes.
I was surprised to find that those fall under procurement. Can you tell me about that?
As I understand it, the individual person that lives in the county that overpaid the water utility becomes a vendor in the system and then is paid back, and so they just fall under the umbrella. We've never had an issue with those. We just
Interesting. It caught my eye.
yes.
Do you have any other questions
No, ma'am.
for him? All right. Thank you very much. Tell me what we have for September.
Brief update.
Yeah.
We're working with the clerk of court's internal audit. That's a little bit more of a complex one, and we're trying to get it right. We're also looking at the streetlights fund. That one's more simple, but we're trying to do a little analysis on that. And broadband, we've started on that process and have not completed that one yet. So those are some things that I would think would be ready for December. Some things that are coming around: the sheriff's office and detention center. It's been 3 years since we've been out there, so it's about time to go out there. And then also the recycling center. Time to head out that way. So those are some things coming up. Is there anything that the committee would like for me to look at, or anything?
Do I have any references? All right, very good. Thank you so much, Mr. Schneider. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate your report today. Commissioners, do you have any comments or
I do not.
further items for this committee? Is there any public that would like to speak on this information? Seeing none, we will adjourn
We're
this.
just excited there's actually public here.
We will adjourn and come back in 2 minutes for the Management and Internal Services Committee.